Please make sure you've picked up your volume, notes, and practice packet at the podium. You will also need your formula sheet in order to solve these problems. We're going to start off with giving you a couple examples. So I'm going to zoom in. We're going to start with the very first page. Very first page is talking about cylinders. It also has the formula right up top for you. So if we look at number 1, it says a cylinder has a radius of 4 inches and a height of 12 inches. Find the volume of the cylinder, leave your answer in terms of pi, and round to the nearest tenth. I'll talk about what that means in a minute. First thing we need is our formula. V equals pi r squared h. Our radius is 4. Our height is 12. We're going to plug in 4 for our r, 12 for our h. Now anything in between here is always multiplication. Now the first part says leave your answer in terms of pi. That means we're just going to write pi. We're not doing anything else with the pi. You're going to pick up your calculators. You're going to type in pi on your calculator, and I'll show you where that is right now. If we look at our calculators, we have a pi symbol right here. You're going to click pi times 4 squared times 12. And it gives you the volume of the cylinder, 192 pi. That is leaving your answer in terms of pi. And don't forget your labels. We're talking about inches, and volume is always cubed. Now the second part of the problem, it says, and round to the nearest tenth. So we need to do part 2 of this. It's going to be the same formula, except when we're rounding, you need to plug in 3.14 for pi. Our radius is still 4. Our height is still 12. We're going to take our calculator, type in 3.14 times 4 squared times 12. Hit enter, and it asks you to round to the nearest tenth, which is 1 decimal place. So our volume is going to be 602.9 inches cubed. Okay, that one's just having you round. 5 and above, give it a shove. Let's move on to number 2. Cylinder has a diameter. Diameter is the entire length across this circle. We need the radius. So we're still going to use our same formula, except we need to find the radius. The radius is going to be half the diameter. So if the diameter is 8, 8 divided by 2 gives me a radius of 4. Problem says a height of 10. We're going to do the same thing we did before. Leave it in terms of pi and round to the nearest tenth. So we're going to plug in our numbers. Pi stays the same. We said our radius is 4 and our height is 10. You're going to go to your calculator, plug it in, use your pi symbol, times 4 squared times 10, which will give us 160 pi feet cubed. Second part of this problem, we're actually going to plug in 3.14 times our radius, which is 4, times our height, and we're going to get a volume of 502.4 feet cubed. And let's do one more together, number 3. Jill has a cylindrical storage container, cylinder. We're still using the formula up here. The storage container is 7 inches tall with a radius of 5. So our radius is 5. If it says 7 inches tall, that's our height. Our height is 7. She wants to fill it with 500 cubic inches of dog food. Will the dog food fit inside the container? First thing we need to do, find the volume in order to determine if the dog food can fit. So we're going to use our formula, pi r squared h. Now, because we need an actual specific amount, you have to type in 3.14 for pi. You cannot leave it pi. We want the exact amount, so you need to use 3.14. Then we're going to multiply by our radius squared times our height of 7. When we plug that in our calculator, 3.14 times 5 squared times 7, you will get a volume of 549.5 inches cubed. So the next part of this is, will 500 cubic inches of dog food fit in this container? The answer is yes. You have 549.5 cubic inches. You only need 500. You have plenty of room. You actually have an extra 49.5. Your homework is going to be for you to try 4, 5, and 6. Use the formula, plug it in, and see how we do. However, we're going to keep going and do a couple more examples for a cone and for a sphere. Our cone formula is written right here for you. Volume equals 1/3 pi r squared times h. So if we read number 1, cone has a radius of 4 inches and a height of 12 inches. Those are the important numbers that we're going to plug in. Radius is going to be 4, height is going to be 12. And the problem is exactly like the front. It says leave your answer in terms of pi and round to the nearest tenth. So we're going to do both. So our first one, our 1/3 for a cone does not change. We're leaving it in terms of pi, so I'm going to leave it pi. My radius is 4. There's always multiplication in between here if there's nothing written. 4 squared times my height of 12. You're going to plug this whole thing in your calculator. 1/3 times pi times 4 squared times 12. Hit enter, and you will get a volume of 64 pi inches cubed. It's always inches cubed when we're doing volume. Now the second part of this is where we're going to, we always keep the 1/3. We're going to turn our pi into 3.14, but the rest of the numbers are the same. Plug it in your calculator, and you will end up with 200.96 inches cubed. We're going to do the same thing for number 2. Number 2, though, says we have a diameter of 18 inches. If we have a diameter of 18 inches, our radius is half that. Our radius is 9. Our height, though, is 23. And we're going to use the same formula. Volume equals 1/3 times pi. That's not changing. 9 squared times 23. When we plug it in our calculator, we will get a volume of 621 pi inches cubed. We also need to round it to the nearest tenth. We need to find the decimal form. So we're going to use the same formula, except pi is going to be 3.14. And we're going to keep our other numbers the same as well. This is going to be 9 squared times 23. You're going to plug it in your calculator just like we did before. 1/3 times 3.14 times 9 squared times 23, giving us a volume of 1,949.9 inches cubed. And we're going to do number 3 as well. Becca has a cone. It's telling us the cone. We also have a shape there for you. a cone full of bird seed to feed the birds at the park. What is the volume of the bird seed? Round your answer to the nearest tenth. So that one we only need the decimal form, which is telling us use 3.14. Now here's the catch for this one. Do you notice that this says, I know it's hard to read, L equals 25. They're not giving you the height of your cone. They're giving you the side of this. If we were to draw this, what does that look like to you? Should look like a right triangle. Last chapter, we learned a squared plus b squared equals c squared. In this case, it's giving us c. And it's also giving us our a. We're trying to find our b, which really is the height of the cone. So if you want to use the shortcut, use the shortcut. B equals square root 25 squared minus 7 squared. Remember, you take the c squared, subtract it by your other number, and you will end up with b equals 24, which really is your height of the cone. This is going to be 24. So now we can go back and use our formula. Volume equals 1/3 times 3.14, because we need to find it as a decimal, so we're going to use it as a decimal. Our radius originally is 7, that didn't change, and we just found the height to be 24. Plug all this in your calculator, and you will end up with a volume of 1,230.9 centimeters cubed. For homework tonight, you're going to solve 4, 5, and 6. Use what you know about cones. Use your formula. You may also need to use your Pythagorean theorem for your right triangle. Keep that in mind. Try them. See how we do. We are going to move on. I'm going to show you just a couple more examples of a circle. So we're going to use the formula, v equals 4/3 pi r cubed. And let's look at our first example. What is the volume of a ball with a radius of 8 inches? Leave your answer in terms of pi and round to the nearest tenth. So we're going to need both answers, just like we did on the other 2 pages. So let's start with our formula. 4/3, pi is staying the same. We want to keep it pi. And it's telling us our radius is 8 inches, and we're going to do 8 cubed. You're going to take your calculator, type in 4/3, use your pi button, multiply by your radius to the 3rd power. When you hit enter, it comes up a little